and howdy do! Hello everyone, welcome back to The Mess. So today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about this method that I use when it comes to rehabbing stumps, chunks, little leafless propagations, unrooted cuttings, all those things like that. As you are noticing, there are quite a few jars on top of jars. And I'm going to explain to you why this mess is what it is. I grow a lot of aroids. And one thing that aroids are known for when they are stressed is that they can revert to stumps. When they are propagated, when they are shipped, pretty much any kind of aroid, whether it's a philodendron, an alocasia, an anthurium. I don't think I have any alocasia anymore. I used to, but not anymore. Alocasias have corms and things like that I won't really get into. But today we're just going to focus on anthurium and philodendron. By the way, if you are a proud owner of the Monstera genus, you can apply this to, I would say, most Monstera as well. So let's just go back a few months. So I did a pretty big import last fall, or end of summer, beginning of last fall. And anyone who has done imports before, especially not just one or two plants, but if you import 5, 10, 20, 50 plants, some of those plants are not going to ship very well, especially philodendron. I found anthurium to ship extremely well. They have very tough, thick roots. The same cannot be said for most philodendron, and I would say even some monstera. Monstera deliciosa probably is a little bit more on the tougher end. I would say that's a pretty tough plant, but I actually imported a subpinnata monstera, and that almost totally died. I think I ended up rehabbing one little stump that put out a leaf, and then I gave it away to somebody or sold it or something. I forget what happened to it, but I don't have it anymore because it was just too much. But all these little guys here, they are my little troopers. This is my little plant rehabilitation facility. What would you call this place? This is Plant Gaze for Life's New Horizons. Look, it's even got like a meditation center here. Look, they're even doing art. They're putting their minds to work doing art. I'm just joking. Plants don't paint. What are you talking about, Jake? Anyway, so after I did the import, I had a lot of plants that reverted to stumps, and they just sat in my grow tent. I gave them 60% humidity. I bumped it up to 70. Sometimes it will go up to 75. Pretty high humidity. They were getting really good light. I was making sure that they were staying moist, because if you have a stump or a chunk or something that's rehabbing, you don't want it to really dry out. You want to keep a lot of moisture. But these stumps that I had, they just were sitting there. Some of them sitting for half a year just as a stump. Some of them had leaves, but then they slowly dropped their leaves over the course of several weeks, maybe even a couple of months, and just finally, after a couple of months, reverted to stumps. And they just sat like that for a long time. Pretty soon, I had 5, 10, probably at one point 15 or even more. Just little cups with these little stumps in them, with these little tags, because I didn't know what the heck they were. And they were just wasting space in my grow tent, not doing shit. There were other plants in there that were popping off, living their best freaking life, while these things were just sitting there, just moping, and they didn't want to get out of bed. I decided, okay, I need to motivate my children. I need to motivate my goddamn motherfucking children, because you're not just going to sit around and be lazy and just stay a stump for the rest of your life. I've seen your roots. That's why you have clear containers. That's why you are all in clear containers. I can see your roots. I can see you're not dead. You're still alive, but you're choosing not to get off your ass and get to work, bitch. So let's just get right into this method. So when it comes to aroids, if you have a chunk, if you have a stump, if you have an unrooted cutting, if you have something that's rehabbing from a rot, rehabbing from shipping stress, what you need to do is get it into an environment with complete 100% humidity. I will say that again, 100% humidity. Okay? Now this is a short-term solution. They're not going to grow in here for 6 months. They're not going to grow in here for a year. They're going to grow in here for maybe another few weeks until they outgrow these things. And then I'm going to slowly acclimate them to slightly lower humidity. If you have stumps that are just refusing to do anything, if you just bought maybe a really expensive cutting of a wish list plant and maybe it's been sitting in water, looking healthy but not doing anything in terms of roots, this will apply to you people as well. Like I said, aroids love moisture, and especially when they are rehabbing, they need all the moisture they can get. All the moisture they can get, people. So what this method is doing is providing a microenvironment that is complete 100% moisture in the air. Where should we start? Should we just start? Let's start with this guy in the middle right here. Let's just take this guy out. So this here is probably the biggest bitch of them all, so I'll start with him. This is Anthurium morinense crossed with magnificum that I imported from Equigenera. Go check out some photos of this thing on Instagram, on Google Images, because it's quite an interesting plant. It has a really cool leaf shape. I got it. It was a pretty big plant. It was probably, oh, I don't know, maybe a foot and a half, 2 feet tall. It was a pretty handsome looking plant. And I had it, and the root system looked good. I had it just rehabbing in my grow tent for a couple of months, and it didn't do anything. And then slowly, one by one, each leaf just got crispy and yellow and just died off, and I slowly watched it revert to a stump. And it stayed a stump for another few months after that. And it wasn't doing anything. I even repotted it, because sometimes if you disturb the roots a little bit, sometimes that can trigger the plant, you know, kind of put it into like a good amount of stress. You know, not cutting the roots, not banging them with a freaking hammer, you crazy motherfuckers. I'm just talking about like unpotting it, maybe like carefully taking away the medium, maybe putting fresh medium in, and then putting it back in, you know, not like breaking the roots or cutting them all off. You know what I'm saying? Okay, like don't, like whatever you're doing, whatever weapons you have just taken out of your garage, put them back. Okay, we're not doing that shit here. So as of recording this video, it's been, I would say 7, maybe 8 months. This is the first new leaf it has ever put out in my care when it was a full plant, ever since it reverted to a stump. First leaf it's ever put out. And it just happened to put it out within weeks of me putting this jar on top and giving it a little mist around. So what I do is I take my little mister bottle. Actually, let me show you. So I will take my mister and what I do is I will just get some moisture, just some humidity around the walls of the jar. These are just little plastic jars. They're great. They don't break. They're nice and light. And then you just put it right over the plant like that. And these jars actually, like I got them off Amazon. There are 2 different types of jars, 2 different like probably brands or styles, and they just happen to like fit perfectly. I can even like pick it up. You know, like see that? But let me take him off again. Look at that. This is the first new leaf he has ever put out in over half of a year. Look at that. Look at that. It's almost flawless. And it's pretty decent size. And it has a beautiful iridescence to it. You can't really see the shape of the leaf. It's still a very juvenile leaf, but once he puts out some more leaves, he's probably really gonna start showing that really weird shape. Again, if you don't know what this hybrid looks like, go check out some photos. It's pretty gnarly, I gotta say. But let's take a look at his stump. So there it is. I got some live or regenerated moss in there. Let's take a look at the root system. So yeah, not a whole lot of, you know, it was interesting. This thing was growing new roots, new fuzzy white roots, but it was still a stump. Even after I uprooted it and repotted it, it put out new roots, but it wasn't doing jack up here. So it is finally starting to take off and put some energy into the top portion, because you've been putting out roots for far too long, buddy, far too long. And what I'm gonna do is I'm probably gonna wait until I see another leaf coming out, and then I will most likely transition him to one of these containers. This is one of those plastic, impressionable, if you will, orchid pots. And I'll probably just kind of like do that. And this will be really good because it has a hole, so it'll retain some humidity in there, but it will allow it, you know, to be ventilated, so it's not going to be 100% humidity in there. But it's going to slowly acclimate him down to a more manageable humidity percentage, if you will, for my liking. So yes, I am very proud of him. He is finally getting motivated, getting off his ass, doing his little hair toss, and checking his nails. All right, let's see what else. Okay, so here, the guy that I took the roof off of, this is Philodendron glorious. Melanochrysum crossed with gloriosum. And this was a stump for, I would say, at least a month or so. And then as soon as I put this little thing, just to give it a little extra humidity, it started pushing out this new growth point. And look at that beautiful little leaf. This hybrid has such a beautiful iridescence to it. That is a class act right there. So there he is. Actually, let's just see any roots. Not a whole lot of roots going on, but it's got a new leaf. So it's doing its thing. I'm going to put it back in this little house. Oh, here's another one. Not this guy. I'm going to get to him in a second. Can I pick you up? Oh, don't fall. This here is Anthurium bessii or Bessiae affinis. I got this as a stump from one of my friends. She was very kind enough to just give it to me for free. I think because she was just like, she had it up to here. She was just like, this thing is not doing anything. It's taking up space. Here, Jake, just take it. See if you can revive it. And I was like, hell yeah, thank you. So it did the same thing with me. It just sat as a stump, didn't do anything. And it would do this thing that some of you that have experience trying to rehab chunks and stumps and all that. It would do this thing where it would put out a growth point and you're like, oh yeah, let's go. And then it would die off. And you're like, oh. And then it would put out another growth point and you're like, oh yeah, let's go. And then it would go, and then it would just dry up. And it would do that a couple of times. And it would try to put out a growth point, but it just couldn't do it. And it didn't matter if I kept it moist. It didn't matter what I did. It didn't matter what the humidity was in my grow tent. It didn't matter how much light it was getting, how much shade it was getting, if it was getting maybe too much light. Unlike this guy over here, this one was actually motivated. Like I could see he was trying, but he needed some help. So what I did was after probably at least 2 or 3 months of just watching him try and fail and try and fail, I decided to put this, it's literally stuck on there. I decided to put this little house on top of him, and literally within weeks, he put out his first leaf right there. Look at that. Now you're going to notice that it got kind of melted a little bit. Now the reason why it melted is because when leaves touch a wet surface, they tend to melt, especially in a very humid environment that doesn't have a lot of airflow. And these containers have zero airflow, people. Has zero airflow. So I had it in a container where it was pressing up against this wall of the jar and it started to melt. So I actually took it out and put it into a different setup, and now it has this new leaf coming out, and I'm trying really hard to not let this leaf touch the moist wall that I have on these things, because once it touches that, you know, the condensation, everything will start to break down the leaf. Let's see any roots. Oh, there's a nice root. There's a nice little worm right there. Let's see. And yeah, I just have some charcoal. There's another one. I got some charcoal in here. I'm trying to get more light for you guys. I got some moss in here. Very light, not compact, not stuffed in there like sardines. It's just in there nice and fluffy. I got some leca on the bottom for drainage. So I'm going to tuck him back in just to keep him from melting anymore. And I'm gonna put this guy back on right there. And as you can see, he is touching a little bit. So I'm gonna keep an eye on him. I'm not gonna spray the inside. As you can see, I didn't spray the inside like I did with this one because I don't want excessive moisture in here. Like he's already been rehabbing. He's putting out his second leaf. He doesn't need super high humidity. You know, he can come back down to 90% humidity. Like it doesn't need to be super wet in there. Okay, I'm gonna put you back in there. Go back with your friend. Maybe you can motivate his ass a little bit more. Okay, now let's go to something a little different. This is an aroid. It's not an Anthurium or a Philodendron. It is a rhodospatha or rhodospatha. Now this, there was nothing rehabbing about it. It was perfectly fine. By the way, this is all cinnamon because I use cinnamon liberally. I use cinnamon as an organic antifungal, and I noticed that this stump here was rotting, and actually it still is rotting. So yeah, I mean, it's not foolproof, but it helps a little bit. and that is triggered by the high humidity. I'm not really worried about this because it already has a really nice root system down there. The roots are very thin. It's kind of hard to see in me. So I don't know if you can see in there, the roots are extremely thin. And this was the original root system, relatively undisturbed. If there is like a secret hack, I feel like this is it. And I didn't invent this, guys, okay? This has been around. But I feel like it's worth making a video because whenever I show this to people, a lot of people are like, wow, that's awesome. I didn't think of trying that. I'm gonna try that. You know, because people think, oh, I'll just stick this little chunk in my cabinet with, 60, 70% humidity, and that'll be enough. No, 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 not all the time. So we've covered moss setups, we've covered aroid mix and soil setups. Now, let's cover one last thing, which is water setups. So if you have something that is rooting in water, people. Okay, let's start with the devil child. This is Philodendron fibrosum. I got this from the same import. It did not ship well at all. From day one, it was rehabbing, and it rehabbed for a long time. And I cut it up into a few different pieces. Those pieces, one by one, all died. They were like, nope, I ain't doing it. And this thing, it was like it was trying, like it put out 2 growth points at one point, but then the leaves just like shriveled up and didn't do anything. And then after, over half a year of this thing doing nothing, by the way, at one point when it had a couple of little tiny pathetic leaves coming out, I was like, oh, and it had some nice roots. I put it into leca and it rotted. And that's why I just don't like philodendron. I don't think I will ever import or even have shipped to me a philodendron ever again because I rarely have success with shipping philodendron. They just have the worst roots ever. They have horrible roots, guys. Anthurium ships so well, but that's a whole nother thing that we'll get into another day. But let's take this off. So this right here, the very first leaf, it has put out. When I said it put out a couple of leaves back in the day, a few months ago, they were like tiny, like little. They weren't really leaves. They were just like little growth points with like a little thing on them, but they were teeny tiny. They weren't really leaves. Like he was trying. I have him in water. I'm hesitant to put him in leca because I'm just afraid he's going to rot again. So I'm going to really, really let him root out in here. I'm going to keep him in water culture for quite some time. I'm going to let him get some secondary growth on his root system. That way, if he does start to die back and his roots don't do well, I can catch it in time and I can cut the rot off and I can still have a little bit of good root left. Hopefully, fingers crossed. But this is the first official leaf he has put out for me in about 7 months or so. That is insane. Look at that. And again, these are small leaves, guys. They're small leaves. I'm not going to pretend these are like freaking rockets. But, for the first leaf, that's pretty good. And, oh, what do we got here? Oh, we got a new one coming, guys. And look, he's got that fibrosum little hairs. He's got them weird little freaking hairs. Do you see that? And let's take him out real quick. He's also had some rot like here and there and everywhere. Look at those new roots. That's what I want. And you want the tips to be nice and white or green. Once you start to see that they're getting a little brown on the edge, that means they're starting to rot. Now these roots, let's see. Now they look dead here, but that's a new root. Oh, wait. It's so hard for this thing to focus, and I can't really put my hand on it, but you guys get what I'm saying. Like, yeah, you can kind of see. It's, there we go. So yeah, the lighter color ones, those are all new roots. Yeah, little new secondary roots down there. So it's not really going to focus, so I'm just going to put him back in. And one thing that aroid roots like to do, and I think it has to do with them looking for air, because as much as they love moisture, they also love air. They don't like to have too much of anything, really. So sometimes they will stick out, and I don't want them to dry out, so I have to kind of like push them back in there. But yeah, I'm going to let him put out one more leaf, and then I'll probably put a larger jar on top of him, because I do have some larger jars. But for now, I think he's doing well. I'm going to put this back in without damaging that growth point. There you go. Look at him. He's just a handsome little dude, isn't he? All right. And now when I spoke about roots popping up looking for air. Look what we got here. So some of you who have followed me on Instagram for a while, you might remember that I imported a Philodendron Sherberichii. That plant was big and beautiful, had a big, fat, gnarly stem. It was great. It was only in the mail for 2 days, guys. Only 2 days. And it totally rotted away. All that I had left was a little stump with a node. That was it. No roots, no leaves, no nothing. And after a few months, that little stump in a closed container with some saran wrap on top, it was putting out just the most adorable little bunch of leaves. It was putting out like 10, 15 leaves. All these little leaves coming out of this little stump. It was the craziest thing. The problem is it wasn't putting out any freaking roots. So I couldn't put it into leca or perlite or moss or anything. I had to keep it in water because it didn't have any roots. I couldn't transfer it. And then after a while, it started putting out some little baby roots, but then the freaking stump started to rot. So then I was fighting that and I started cutting that back. And yeah, basically the chunk is now gone, like it totally rotted. Luckily, like by the grace of God, I was able to save a little bit of the top. So those roots down there, let me see if I can get my life together real quick. So if you guys can see those dark roots at the bottom, I'm pretty sure those are dead or just dormant. I don't think they're rotting though. They don't pull off when I give them a little tug. Oh, look at that. There are some roots on that one on the right. I don't know if you can see that, little tiny roots. That's the thing with philodendron, guys. The roots are so fine, like little angel hairs. They're very delicate. And look at that root right there. So basically, I'm trying so hard to get this guy to root faster than rot can get him because he is hanging on by a thread. This is the only node and he's got 3 cute little leaves, but he's as close to death's door as any of them right now. And I'm gonna be honest, guys, water was just not enough. He was still rotting. He wasn't growing that fast. So what I had to do, I had to take extreme measures. I took this little cup of water and I put it into another jar and I put a lid over that. So not only is he in water culture right now, as I'm trying to root him out for the second time, but he also is in a container that is getting an additional 100% humidity. So that root there, let me just close this right now just so you guys get the full effect. Do you see that little white root sticking out of the water like that? So yes, it's looking for some air. The problem is I cannot aerate this thing very often, really ever, because, and it's probably not really gonna show because it's kind of in the shadows, but there are little fine hairs on that root. And what those hairs do is that they attach themselves to, in the wild, it could be rocks, it could be, you know, bark, it could be whatever. So that will attach itself to leca, it'll attach itself to moss, it'll attach itself to aroid mix, you name it. And those fine little hairs will become dehydrated within minutes. If I left this thing out just for 5 minutes, that root would start to dry up and it would be a goner. And honestly, like I'm looking at it now, it looks like the tip already turned a little bit dark in color. Literally just having it out, what, a minute, 2 minutes just to show you guys? So yeah, he has to be in complete and utter 100% humidity. I gotta keep this thing nice and taut. This guy he's tried so hard. I feel like I owe it to him to give him one last leg up. So yes, and the last thing I want to show you that I am currently propagating, this is Anthurium scherzerianum. This is that really cool one that looks kind of like the common Andrianum, but it has that little pigtail. Some people call it the pigtail Anthurium. Has that little pigtail, little corkscrew on it. Now this I imported from Ecogenera US, and like I said, Anthuriums for the most part, they ship pretty well, with the exception of some of the more finicky ones. Probably, you know, I mean, people say they don't have a lot of luck with queen Anthuriums or maybe regals and, you know, the real fussy ones. But when it comes to the majority of them, especially a nice thick non-velvet leaf like this thing should have shipped very well. It did not ship well because whoever packaged it, they completely saturated it. They overwatered it. It was in soil, by the way. It wasn't even like an aroid mix. It was in like a very compact soil, and it was drenched, and all the roots, pretty much all the roots had rotted. And I actually told them, like, hey, listen, you guys done fucked up, and they actually did refund me, which I'm very happy about because this plant was not cheap. This plant was about 50 bucks. I mean, when you spend 50 bucks on a freaking plant, and it's only in the mail for 3-4 days, and you overwater it and then it just rots on you, that is no bueno. Like, no, you guys know better. And maybe somebody just had the hose on a little bit too long. Maybe it was their first or second day. It's okay. A wise woman once said, everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has those days. But you know what? It doesn't mean we can't have a little comeback from those mistakes, because look at all those roots. It's not focusing once again. You know what, guys? This is why I'm not really a YouTuber. I'm just on here pretending to be a YouTuber. I'm not even, look at this. Okay, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh my goodness, there's so many. I think that is the growth point. Wow. And another root there. And a root there. So like it is doing well. I am very happy with this guy. So that is why I have him in 100% humidity right there. I give these guys very good light. I do not keep them here. I just have this here to show you. I keep it in my grow tent. The reason I keep it in the grow tent is not because it needs that extra humidity. I have it in there because it has good light, but also because it's out of the way. Again, this is not a very pretty setup, so I don't want to look at it every day. I like to put these kind of propagations in places where I'm not going to look at it every day. I think the problem with a lot of people that get a really expensive plant, whether it's a cutting or a chunk or a stump or whatever, what have you, they put it in a place in their cabinet or in their home, in their windowsill, and they just watch it. They just watch it all day, every day, all night, and they helicopter parent it. And I think you are more likely to over care for it, maybe keep like taking it out of the pot and checking the roots and disturbing it and all that stuff. And I just think like, no, you just gotta let it sit and do its thing and give it a lot of moisture. High 100% humidity. I cannot recommend this enough. Oh, and by the way, I just want to show you a little success story. This here is Anthurium rotundistigmatum. This is up there with, I would say, Queen Anthurium. This is probably one of the hardest plants I have rehabbed and just grown in general. It came to me last summer, end-ish of last summer. Not in that same import, but around that time. And it was a cute little plant, maybe a little smaller than this. And within a couple of weeks, the leaves just one by one, they just all fell off. They all got crispy and yellow and just died. So I had this as a stump in my grow tent for a long time, until I finally was like, maybe I should just give this like a terrarium setting. So I put a little baggie over it. I forget what I did. I think I either put a bag over it. And by the way, guys, you can do this. You can spag and bag. This is just one version of, spag and bag, or you can throw these things in a terrarium if you have a terrarium. But I wanted to show you this little success story. So now he is in, I would say 50 to 60% humidity. He doesn't need it super high anymore, but he needed that 100% humidity in the beginning to really pop off. And he's not the easiest Anthurium to care for, at least for me. As you can see, his leaves have not come out perfect, but he's getting there. He's getting there. And maybe he needs a little bit more humidity than I'm giving him. But overall, he is definitely a success story when it comes to this setup, especially for an Anthurium that is so difficult. I also have done this with a Philodendron 69686, and that has done very, very well. Unfortunately, again, because it's a Philodendron and the roots are just like, they're horrible. I just wanted to reposition it a little bit in the pot just to make it a little bit less awkward, and the roots rotted. So now it's back in water. It's rooting out again, so it's doing fine. So it's still very healthy, but it's now back in water. And now has a bunch of water roots, and I'm hesitant to put it back into some type of like substrate. Oh my goodness. So yes, I'm still learning things as I go, guys, but I wanted to highlight this setup that I have. These all have been popping up in the last month. These are all very recent. Like all these new leaves have all popped out within the last month or so. All the things that I showed you. So it gives you very, very fast results. Now, just a little way to end this video. Some of you might be like, Jake, this is great, but like I don't have a grow tent to throw all my ugly babies in. I don't have a greenhouse cabinet. I don't have a place to put these. This is great, but also I don't want to stick a whole bunch of these in my windowsill. They look kind of ugly. I am going to give you a little bit of inspiration on how you can make these look a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, if you will. You can take your little propagation jars and turn them into little mini terrariums and put your little propagations in there and just watch them grow. You can, by the way, you can also use these as plant stands for some of your more pendant boys, like this one right here. And here's one last example of a very big jar terrarium that I actually put my Bessie Affinis into back when it was still just like one little leaf coming out. And I have a little piper in here. I have some little things in here. I don't even know what they are. But you can take a couple of your stumps, just throw them into a nice little container like this. And just make it, like, put some moss in there. Just throw your rehabbing babies in here, put it in your windowsill, give it some nice bright light. No direct sun, I wouldn't recommend direct sun, but a lot of bright shade, and just watch them pop off. And as they are rooting out and putting out their leaves, you still get to have a nice little display in your windowsill. All right, I think that's it. I think I covered everything. So yeah, this was a fun video. Hopefully this method works for you. If you do something similar to this, let me know, and let me know how this method works for you if you end up trying it. I think that's it. All right, good night, motherfuckers.